Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the PreScouter webinar series. My name is Ashish Basare, Chief Scientist at PreScouter. Today's webinar will cover 9 disruptive technologies that will change the world by 2025. The presentation will run for about 45 minutes, followed by a question and answers forum. You may type your questions into the chat panel on the Join Me screen sharing toolbar, which should be located at the top of your screen. This webinar is an abridged version of topics covered in the full report. The full report is available to you free of charge. If you would like a copy of this report, please email webinar@prescouter.com. Let's begin. The world is changing at an ever-growing rate. Many businesses struggle to stay abreast of relevant or even disruptive technologies, sometimes before it's too late. 2 famous case studies include Mcnally, a cartography company that was founded in 1856, while the Ottoman Empire was still a global powerhouse. Even though they were experts in their domain, Mcnally failed to predict the importance of the global positioning satellite network being built out in the last half of the 20th century. New companies that leveraged the new GPS technology, like Garmin and MapQuest, created a disruptive leap in technology so vast that Mcnally was not able to innovate fast enough, and therefore, in 2003, Mcnally was forced to file for bankruptcy. Another company that we probably all used growing up, Encyclopedia Britannica, suffered a similar fate. Encyclopedia Britannica was so old that it was present during the American Revolution, through 2 world wars. They documented man's first steps on the moon and witnessed the rise of the internet. Sadly, the internet would be Encyclopedia Britannica's downfall in 2012, with Wikipedia leveraging the democratization of information to provide a completely disruptive approach to knowledge transfer. These 2 examples, as well as many others, illustrate how innovation is not linear, disruptive technologies are hard to identify, and competition for business is not always where you might expect it. These 2 examples, as well as many others, illustrate how innovation is not linear, disruptive technologies are hard to identify, and competition for business is not always where you might expect it. Helping companies is at the core of PreScouter's mission. We help companies like yours by providing data-driven intelligence and insights, helping solve your innovation goals, whether they be near-term objectives or long-range targets. We have worked with over 130 Fortune 500 sized companies to solve over 400 projects by working to answer questions about technology, connecting our clients to promising technology providers, and identifying disruptive technologies before they become a threat to our clients. Allow me to briefly illustrate how the PreScouter process operates, as it's as simple as 1, 2, 3. First, you identify an innovation need or something that you would like to learn more about, say, for example, how a disruptive technology might impact your business. You will fill out a very simple statement of work outlining basically 4 questions. After that, the PreScouter assembles a team of scholars, usually recruited from Tier 1 research institutions globally. These scholars are all under non-disclosure agreements with our clients, and these scholars use a combination of their own human intelligence networks as well as proprietary software developed at PreScouter to scan the entire globe based on methodologies employed by NASA and the Department of Defense, to name a few. After several stage-gated meetings with you and your team, we deliver a report of curated information addressing your statement of work. On average, our clients find that there's between 75 and 80% new and relevant information, which allows them to make informed decisions and take action on those decisions. If you have any questions regarding how PreScouter operates, please feel free to contact me at any point. And now on to today's presentation. Our first speaker will be Charlie Wright. He will be talking about advanced energy, big data, and the Internet of Things. A little background on Charlie. Charlie attended Vanderbilt for his undergraduate education, where he majored in physics, molecular and cell biology, as well as Spanish. Charlie is currently a PhD candidate at the University of Chicago, where he is researching the utilization of computation to elucidate the stochastic behavior of individual organisms, including the complex realm of biological regulation processes. Charlie joined PreScouter just over half a year ago and has worked on projects ranging from microfluidics to market analysis of industrial manufacturing techniques for oil and gas operations. Without further ado, I will turn it over to you, Charlie.
Thank you, Ashish. The first topic I'll be talking to you about today are advanced energy technologies. The world uses a massive amount of energy at present, over 156 billion megawatt hours every year. This is about 26 times the annual oil output of Saudi Arabia. And this number is expected to grow by over 50% between now and 2040. This massive growth is fueling increasing uncertainty over the future of our global energy usage. But today, I'll talk to you about a few technologies that will alleviate these concerns and will allow us to reliably meet our future energy targets. The first example is solar power. In 2014, solar comprises less than 1% of global energy production, so it doesn't seem like such a big deal. However, if we look back over the last decade, we see that the global use of solar has been rising exponentially. Because this trend is expected to continue into the near future, it's anticipated that solar will become the largest single source of global energy production by 2050. One of the major drivers behind this trend has been the precipitous drop in prices of photovoltaic modules, down from about $77 per watt in 1977 to just 36 cents per watt at present. By 2016, it's expected that all 50 states in the US will have achieved grid parity. Now, these numbers are just for traditional inorganic solar cells, but there are even newer technologies that will make solar more affordable and accessible. For example, organic photovoltaic cells, also known as plastic solar cells. One prominent example comes from the National Physical Laboratory in the United Kingdom, where scientists have recently demonstrated 3D printed solar cells that work best when it's cloudy outside. Because these cells are so cheap to manufacture and are easily customizable, it's expected that we'll see widespread commercial uptake of them within the next 5 years. Now imagine if you could have a completely invisible, unobtrusive solar cell. This is, in fact, already a reality. The startup Ubiquitous Energy has come out with a film coating that can be applied to any glass surface to generate electricity, sort of in the same way that we already apply coatings to our windows to cut down on climate control costs. Although these transparent solar cells are less efficient than traditional silicon cells, they could be put into all sorts of new places because you don't even know they're there. So if you consider that about 2/3 of the surface area of a skyscraper is made of glass, you could coat every window in a high-rise office building and in this way generate over a quarter of your building's electricity just from solar windows. One of the major barriers to the widespread uptake of renewable energy resources has traditionally been the discrepancy between the times that the energy is generated and the times that people actually want to use it. One way to address this issue is through advanced energy storage and recapture technologies. Lightcell Energy has demonstrated a technology that can capture thermal energy from compressed air, which would otherwise go to waste. So how this works is during off-peak hours, the device charges, and during on-peak hours, it discharges either back into the electric grid or into the building's heating system with over 90% round-trip thermal efficiency. Lightcell has already raised over $37 million, and they are expecting that their next generation product will become the first energy storage system that can outcompete gas peaker plants. An alternative approach is the distributed storage of electricity in electric vehicles. Scientists at the University of Delaware have teamed up with a local electricity utility in a pilot program where they outfitted 9 Mini Coopers with two-way electric chargers and hooked them up to the grid in a sort of mini power plant. So the battery of each car is charged during off-peak hours and then discharges back into the grid during on-peak hours, assuming that wouldn't deplete the car's battery. Because each of these vehicles can put out the average draw of 10 houses, scientists estimate that they could generate over $100 per month of profits per car, which would easily allow this technology to pay for itself. So far, I've focused on solar energy, generating power by capturing solar power. But what if we could tap into the same source of energy as the sun itself? This is the promise of nuclear fusion, which has long been thought something we wouldn't see in our lifetimes. But recently, Lockheed Martin announced a compact, so-called high-beta fusion reactor. They are anticipating to have a prototype by 2017 and a fully functional power plant by 2022. Because this design is so compact, just about 2 by 4 meters, and uses raw input materials that are cheap, widely available, and safe, it would find a widespread uptake for distributed power generation in developing nations, meaning that these high beta fusion reactors can meet baseload global electricity demand in 3 decades. The combination of technologies that I've talked to you about in today's webinar and others which you will find in the report will change the way we think about and use our energy resources in coming years. We should expect to see a transition away from the 20th century model of the electric grid that was dominated by large centralized utilities towards a network of independent, clean, local generators of energy. In essence, a democratization of our energy resources. One of the trends that will enable this smart energy grid is advanced analytics, also known as big data. The total amount of data available is growing at an exponential rate. To put things into perspective, here are a few examples of data sources of various sizes. Starting with the complete works of Shakespeare at a few megabytes, we move up 1,000-fold to all of the compositions of Beethoven in audio. Then another 1,000-fold, we would arrive at all of the printed material in the US Library of Congress. Jumping up by a factor of 1 million, we would reach the exabyte regime. It's estimated that all the words ever spoken by human beings would total to about 5 exabytes. In 2007, our digital universe was 300 exabytes in size. That number grew by a factor of 10 to about 4.4 zettabytes in 2013, and is expected to grow by another factor of 10 to 2020. Put differently, over 90% of available data has been generated just in the last 2 years. One of the areas where big data has already been used is to generate new insights. And a great example comes from healthcare. Project Artemis is a joint venture between IBM, the University of Ontario Institute of Technology, and the Toronto Hospital for Sick Children. Doctors have built a technology that can record and analyze vital statistics from premature infants in real time. In such cases, infections are a leading cause of death. Project Artemis can alert hospital staff to infections up to 24 hours earlier, thus allowing them more time to administer life-saving treatments. Aside from saving lives, it's estimated that big data could provide about $300 billion of value each year to the US healthcare system. Another way in which big data can provide value is by improving efficiencies. US manufacturers spend over $200 billion every year powering their plants. What if they could drastically reduce this number using big data? One example of how this could be accomplished comes from Western Canada, where a pulp mill has used data analytics to predict system load changes and account for them before they occur. This has resulted in almost $7 million in net annual savings coming from decreased fossil fuel costs and imported electric power. One of the challenges in dealing with the vast new amounts of data is the fact that much of the data that's coming online at present is unstructured. For example, human speech. Ibm Watson is a platform that excels at natural human language processing. It made headlines in 2011 when it beat two human Jeopardy champions, and is now available as Ibm Watson Analytics. This platform delivers self-service analytics for business, with the goal of automating steps such as data collection, processing, and visualization to reduce barriers to using big data in business. In the report, you'll find other examples of where big data has already been used, ranging from GM car dealerships and a smart missile factory to the Pampers website and Barnes & Noble bookstores. As we open up new data sources and find novel uses for existing data, data will become increasingly commodified. 9 out of 10 executives feel that their decisions would have been improved had all relevant information been available. Big data will make this goal a reality, enabling truly data-driven decision-making in business. One of the major sources of new data will be machine-to-machine interactions, which are one facet of the Internet of Things. This refers to connected or smart devices that can sense information about their external environments and communicate both with each other and with the Internet, the traditional Internet. About 5 years ago, the number of connected devices surpassed the number of people on the planet. At present, there are about 3 smart devices per person, and by 2022, it's estimated that there will be about 8 per person, generating over $14 trillion in value, which will come from, for example, improved customer experiences, reductions of the time to market, decreased supply chain waste, coupled with better asset utilization and labor efficiencies. One of the earliest examples of the Internet of Things comes from the house. SmartThings was recently acquired by Samsung, and they provide a line of connected devices and sensors for the home environment that can communicate information to and be remotely controlled by a smartphone app. This would allow you to, for example, turn off your oven after you've left the house, or toggle your lights while you're away on vacation, or receive a notification whenever your children get home from school. Now imagine if you could apply that same level of knowledge to the factory floor. This is the promise of a smart factory, where, for example, you could monitor a piece of raw material as it moves through the factory and out the door. Intel has already built such a factory using its Gateway Solutions devices, which connect legacy unconnected devices to the cloud. They've seen over $9 million in cost savings resulting from decreased component failures and energy costs, coupled with increased equipment uptime and productivity. Another example of the Internet of Things will be smart marketing, which will allow enhanced interactions with customers by, for example, delivering personalized or spatially targeted advertisements or predicting when a customer needs service. Another example, which you will find in the report, is transportation. The U.S. Department of Transportation is already working on steps to build a smart infrastructure that would allow vehicles to communicate with passenger or pedestrian cell phones and with other connected devices in the infrastructure to reduce traffic congestion and accidents. The trend in each of these instances of the Internet of Things is towards dramatically increased connectivity at the home, on the road, in the office, and on the factory floor. The Internet of Things will lead to dramatic improvements in operations and efficiency resulting from a detailed knowledge of one's physical environment.
Thank you, Charlie. Our next speaker is Dr. Patricia Rupert Nason. Patricia attained her bachelor's degree in bioengineering at Rice University. She then went on to complete her PhD in chemical engineering from the University of Wisconsin at Madison, where she researched computational modeling to determine mechanisms for chemical reactions on catalytic surfaces. Patricia joined PreScouter about 9 months ago and has worked on a variety of projects ranging from crystallization techniques for industrial applications through advanced oil and gas technologies to novel methods to train populations in developing regions of the world. Without further ado, I will turn it over to you, Tricia.
Thanks, Ashish. The Internet of Things needs lots of low-cost sensors, and one of the technologies that can provide this is microelectromechanical systems, also known as MEMS. So what are MEMS? MEMS are tiny mechanical devices produced using integrated circuit technology. This allows the creation of low-cost, miniaturized sensors and actuators, which consume very little power. As a result, MEMS are becoming increasingly ubiquitous. For instance, a typical late model car includes over 50 MEMS devices, including silicon nozzles for fuel injection, accelerometers for airbag deployment, microphones for noise cancellation, exhaust gas sensors, and more. Overall, the automotive market for MEMS devices is $2.6 billion in 2013. And since 2007, with the introduction of the iPhone, mobile computing has been a major driver of the MEMS market as well. Applications include accelerometers, gyroscopes, pressure sensors, microphones, autofocus, and there are many more still to come, some of which are shown in this figure. Now, one of the new applications of MEMS sensors is MEMS gas sensors. The buildup of combustible gases on oil and gas platforms is a critical issue that can lead to explosions. Consequently, the gas sensors are essential, but the installation of wired sensors is time-consuming and expensive. The European Space Agency and Syntec have developed a tiny MEMS sensor which performs infrared spectroscopy on a chip. It uses only 5 milliwatts compared to 3 to 6 watts for the systems currently in use. This allows it to be truly wireless with a 2-year battery life, so it can be installed exactly where it's needed. The 90 to 95% reduction in installation time and 80% total cost savings has been observed in early installations. Moreover, these sensors are tunable, allowing them to be applied to other applications, such as alkolocks, preventing drunk driving, air quality monitoring, perhaps even CO2 sensors in food packaging. This and other MEMS sensors, such as GC on a chip, open up a $2 billion gas detection market to MEMS sensors, which is only likely to grow with the introduction of these low-cost, low-power sensors. MEMS are applicable to the medical market as well. 5.1 million people suffer from heart failure in the US, and current monitoring methods are generally inadequate, with over 50% of patients being readmitted to the hospital within 6 months. CardioMEMS has developed an implantable sensor for heart failure patients with no leads and no batteries. In clinical trials, patients experienced a 37% reduction in hospitalizations and improved quality of life. This could save $6 billion annually for the healthcare system. As a result, CardioMEMS was acquired for $435 million in 2014 by St. Jude Medical, and they anticipate $259 million in annual sales by 2018. Other applications discussed in the report include microfluidics and energy harvesting. Over time, MEMS devices have shrunk steadily, starting with micro machines in the 1960s, which were millimeter scale. Today, MEMS devices are moving towards the nanometer scale. At the same time, the number of functions available in MEMS devices has increased. As of 2012, there were only 10 basic MEMS functions in large-scale production, but many more in various stages of development. Thousands of functions have been demonstrated, and 100 of those could hit large-scale production in the next 20 years. The cost has dropped dramatically as well. For instance, accelerometers cost $5 each in 1990, but today cost less than $1. All of this has led to MEMS sustained and rapid growth. Today, MEMS constitute an $8 billion industry with over 6 billion units sold annually. The market continues to grow with a projected 14% compounded annual growth rate in units sold from 2013 to 2018. From healthcare to automotive to your mobile phone, tiny low-cost MEMS sensors are allowing objects to respond to their environment in new ways at ever lower costs. Even smaller than MEMS devices are nanomaterials. Nanomaterials are characterized by at least one dimension between 1 and 100 nanometers, comparable to molecular scale and 1,000 times smaller than a human hair. At this scale, materials develop unique properties distinct from what exists in the bulk, as the surface properties dominate the bulk properties. Throughout history, what we can create has been limited by the materials available, so much so that we characterize societies by the advanced materials they use. Nanomaterials are a new class of materials which, like plastics before them, open up new technological possibilities. Most of the nanomaterials on the market today are zero-dimensional, such as nanoparticles and quantum dots, but higher dimensional nanomaterials are increasingly becoming commercially available. For instance, carbon nanotubes. Carbon nanotubes are tiny tubes of carbon, like rolled-up chicken wire. They are the strongest and stiffest materials yet discovered, 100 times stronger than stainless steel. And they also have exceptional electrical properties. They can transmit 1,000 times more electricity per unit area than copper, and their electrical properties are tunable. However, the economical production of commercial quantities of high-quality carbon nanotubes has long proved challenging, but this barrier is starting to fall. In 2011, researchers at Rice University developed a way to spin a thread out of carbon nanotubes. Now, for the first time, electrical cables made of carbon nanotubes are commercially available. Under the trade name Lightwire, these are a direct replacement for copper cable in all applications. However, they're 80% lighter, 20% stronger, non-corrosive, leading to longer service life. They're hydrophobic, so ice won't form on them, and they stretch 2/3 less when heated, which means that, for instance, high-voltage power cables will stretch less in hot weather. Despite all these advantages, Lightwire is comparable to copper in both price and its basic electrical properties. Yet Lightwire's electrical properties can actually be improved exponentially with increasing frequency, allowing even greater gains. Lightwire's improved transmission properties and reduced weight could provide significant energy savings. For instance, in the power grid, it can reduce transmission losses by up to 60%. And a 777 with Lightwire, instead of copper, as for electrical conductors, could weigh over 4,000 pounds less. As a result, Weatherford International recently signed an agreement to be the exclusive distributor of Lightwire for the oil and gas industry, and they project $350 million in annual sales in this industry alone. Other nanomaterials covered in the report include self-assembled monolayers, graphene, and aerojets. With innovative production techniques and innovations in applications, the nanomaterials market is significant and growing. Considering carbon nanotubes alone, production capacity has been growing over 32% annually, with a projected capacity of nearly 13,000 megatons in 2016. The growth of nanomaterials will create new possibilities and may disrupt existing markets. From medicine to aerospace, transportation, energy, and personal electronics, nanomaterials will affect virtually every area of our lives. What we can make is limited not only by the materials we have available, but also by the manufacturing tools and techniques we have available. 3D printing is a new manufacturing tool, which will make new things possible and which may disrupt existing businesses. So what exactly is 3D printing? 3D printing, also known as additive manufacturing, is a class of technologies which produce 3D objects from digital CAD files by building them up one thin layer at a time. 3D printing has been widely used for rapid prototyping, and in this capacity has revolutionized the design process for many companies. However, it's now capable of much more. It is now possible to produce finished parts and products in a wide range of materials, including plastic, ceramic, metal, and even food. 3D printing is now a viable manufacturing tool with distinct advantages and disadvantages compared to traditional tools. Two major barriers for the production of parts by 3D printing have been product quality and production speed. The case studies show that these barriers are starting to fall. The first company I would like to talk to you about today is Aerojet Rocketdyne. In June of 2014, they test-fired a Phantom rocket engine entirely produced using 3D printing. Now, 3D printing has some special qualities, and one of those is that with 3D printing, unlike traditional manufacturing techniques, complexity is free. This means you can omit unnecessary material, and you may be able to make complicated assemblies as a single item. For instance, in the case of the rocket, it was printed in 3 parts rather than the dozens typically used. This reduced the time for design and construction to a couple of months from over a year and reduced the cost 65%. As a result, Aerojet Rocketdyne has received $11.75 million contract with the Air Force for the development and demonstration of large-scale manufacturing using 3D printing techniques. Now, the other company I'm going to talk to you about today is one I'm sure you all know, which is Google. Google has announced that they plan to start producing custom modular smartphones in 2015. You'll be able to specify the looks and functionality of your phone and upgrade individual components over time. For instance, you could replace the camera. Now, to make this possible, they need to be able to produce custom smartphone bodies at industrial scale. So they've partnered with 3D Systems, one of the leaders in 3D printing technology. 3D Systems has developed a 3D printing production line, which is 50 times faster than previous 3D printing systems, achieving speeds comparable to injection molding. This makes 3D printing a viable mass production technology, not just for smartphones, but for other consumer goods as well. And it enables mass customization and just-in-time, high-volume manufacturing. Other topics covered in the report include FDA-approved implanted medical devices produced using 3D printing, bioprinted tissues and their applications in drug testing, and 3D printed food, which is spectacular to look at. Now, one of the other special properties of 3D printing is flattened economies of scale. With 3D printing, there are no tooling costs. So it's possible to make 100 or 1,000,000 of items of a product at a similar per unit cost. This lowers the cost of items which must be customized, such as dental crowns and hearing aid shells, most of which are already produced using 3D printing technology. It also allows the inexpensive customization of mass-produced items, such as cell phones. Other impacts include speeding the innovation cycle and lowering barriers to entry into markets, which can be good or bad depending on whether you're the person already in that market. And then finally, the flattened economies of scale change the logistics equation. If it costs the same to make a few of an item as very many, it may no longer make sense to produce all of your product in one central factory and ship it all over the world. Rather, you may want to have many production centers, which are located close to your customers. 3D printing has grown dramatically in recent years, and that trend will only accelerate with increasing production speed. The 3D printing market was worth $3.1 billion in 2013, up 35% from the previous year, and sales volumes are growing even more dramatically. 9,800 industrial and 56,000 consumer and enterprise printers were sold in 2013, and those sales are expected to increase by as much as 100% annually in coming years. By changing how we make things, 3D printing creates new possibilities for what we can make. And meanwhile, flattened economies of scale may disrupt existing business models and businesses.
Thank you, Tricia. Our last speaker today will be Dr. Aki Ueda, who will be covering automation and artificial intelligence, terahertz wave technologies, and biotechnology. Aki received her Bachelor's of Science in Biology from Cornell University. She then attended Northwestern University for her PhD in Biomedical Sciences from the Department of Dermatology. Aki's research focused on molecular mechanisms of immune cell biology and autoimmune diseases to treat ailments ranging from rheumatoid arthritis to Crohn's disease. Aki joined PreScouter over 2 years ago and has worked on a wide variety of projects. A few highlights include water purification technology, advanced biotherapeutics, and even advances in CPG-based products. Aki, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Ashish. Like 3D printing, automation and artificial intelligence is a disruptive force that encompasses a large range of technologies. However, there is a unifying essence to these technologies, which is that they extend human ability in order to create new products and applications. By integrating big data, new materials, and powerful sensors, automation and artificial intelligence facilitates communication between humans and the world around them, thereby increasing productivity, understanding, and profits. I think that everyone is familiar with this webpage. When you log into your Amazon.com account, you are greeted by name and then given an array of products that you might want to purchase based on your previous purchase history. Studies show that consumers really enjoy this. 80% of them prefer a personalized shopping experience, and as a consequence, Amazon profits increased by 29%, or a whopping $3.7 billion within the first year after the introduction of their personalized recommendation platform. But what if you want to sell not just a book, but your entire brand? This requires a much more thorough understanding of your consumer base, which was kind of difficult in the past. But now, with all of the information that consumers provide through social networking as well as their internet presence, it's possible to create interest graphs such as this one. For example, these two graphs show the consumer base of Whole Foods versus Taco Bell. Some of the results are to be expected, such as the fact that Whole Foods consumers enjoy healthy living and are foodies, while Taco Bell consumers are financially focused. However, there are some unexpected revelations that can be taken from these interest graphs, such as the fact that Taco Bell consumers are avid gamers who love football, while Whole Foods consumers prefer hockey. The company that's producing these interest graphs is called Gravity. By taking the information that consumers implicitly provide through their internet presence, their social media presence, and pairing that with real-time filters and advanced artificial intelligence, they're able to personalize both the web experience for consumers as well as the marketing for companies. They've personalized more than 1 billion page views a month, and in this way, they've increased consumer engagement by 240% over non-personalized sites. They were named the 2014 Most Disruptive Publishing Technology and were acquired by AOL in 2014 for $90.7 million. Companies that utilize this type of research could potentially eliminate focus groups, market research, and the surveys that they currently rely on. Other examples that are included in the report are advanced robots for the home that will be better personal assistants, as well as advanced human-device interfaces that will provide a basis for augmented reality technologies, as well as contribute to technologies such as prosthetics that could be controlled by the power of the mind alone. Automation and artificial intelligence is already increasing efficiency and safety in our current life. The automated pharmacy that has been implemented in the Singapore General Hospital has increased accuracy to 99.9% and cut waiting times in half. On the road, Google's prototype of the self-driving vehicle has already logged 700,000 accident-free miles. It's able to avoid obstacles and also stop at railroad crossings. In these ways, it's not surprising that automation and artificial intelligence is a rapidly growing field. It was a $20.2 billion market in 2012 and is expected to grow with an annual growth rate of 10.5%. In this way, automation and artificial intelligence will allow us to extend beyond our human capabilities, allowing for new technologies that were never before possible. Terahertz wave technology is another field that is expanding at an exponential rate. These technologies are promised to enable the next frontier in a diversity of applications, including superhuman vision, non-invasive chemical analysis, biomedical diagnosis, and unprecedented rates of wireless data transfer. The terahertz range lies between the microwave range and the infrared range, and previously there was a general lack of adequate emitters and detectors for this range, and this deficiency was called the Terahertz Gap. Physicists and engineers specifically coined this term because they understood the huge potential of terahertz waves based on their properties, which include the fact that they're non-ionizing, so that they're safe for tissues and DNA. However, they are able to penetrate certain materials, such as skin, wood, plastics, and ceramics, so that they can be used for non-invasive 3D imaging purposes. Chemicals also have a unique spectral fingerprint under terahertz wave range, meaning that these technologies can be used for precise chemical analyses. Specific frequencies within the terahertz range are also able to transmit data wirelessly at very high rates. The Terahertz gap is rapidly closing because of phenomenal progress in research, which is decreasing the cost and the size of the chips used to emit and detect terahertz waves. One application of this new generation of chips is medical diagnosis. So currently, collecting health metrics can be very time-consuming, and it can require lots of different types of equipment and require training and understanding of that equipment. It might even require a visit to the doctor. But what if one single handheld device could collect your metrics while you're on the go or in your home, store that information, and upload it into a device like your cell phone? Fans of science fiction might realize that such technology has already been imagined. For example, here's Dr. McCoy from the series Star Trek using his handheld tricorder to examine a patient. There is a company now that's trying to bring such technology into reality. Scanadu has created the Scalp. It's a handheld device. When held to your forehead within 10 seconds, it can collect metrics such as temperature, respiratory rate, heart rate variability, hemoglobin saturation, and blood pressure. It's slated for a 2015 release and is meant to be very affordable, around $200 per unit. The concept was so popular that it quickly crowdsourced $1.67 million and became the highest funded Indiegogo campaign in history. Other applications of terahertz waves will utilize their chemical analysis capabilities. For example, they have been used to detect counterfeit pills, which may help in eliminating the $75 billion black market for fake pills that currently exists. Terahertz waves have also been used in aerospace, detecting minute cracks on the surface of space shuttles, making them safer before takeoff. The subsurface imaging capabilities of terahertz waves will be used in security purposes as well as for agricultural quality analysis, and may even enable you to see the bones of your own hand using your cell phone. Certain frequencies of the terahertz range can transmit very high rates of wireless data. It was initially shown to be able to transmit data at 3 gigabits per second, which is 20 times greater than the current Wi-Fi standard. Even more recently, terahertz waves were used to transmit data at a phenomenal rate of 100 gigabits per second. Exponential growth in terahertz wave research is fueling an exponential growth in the market. In 2011, the terahertz wave market was estimated to be around $83.7 million. It's expected to grow at an annual rate of 35%, and by 2021 expected to be around $507 million. In this way, terahertz waves will literally become the wave of the future, enabling smaller forms of technologies as well as new technologies that were never before possible. Biotechnology is a disruptive force that also uses what already exists in nature in order to create new products and new technologies. One early example of biotechnology is penicillin, which was derived from a mold and used to make an antibiotic that eventually saved over 100 million lives. Now, biotechnology is being used to address one of the biggest problems in our society today, which is the environmental impact of carbon emissions. The aviation industry is one of the biggest producers of carbon emissions. So, for example, a single round-trip flight from New York City to San Francisco creates around 2 to 3 tons of carbon emissions per passenger. And to put that into perspective, people who do not fly at all only produce around 10 to 19 tons in an entire year. The European Union has recognized the aviation as one of the biggest contributors to a carbon footprint. And therefore, in 2011, they proposed legislation that would fine airlines flying out of the EU if they produce carbon emissions over a given threshold. If this goes into effect, it could potentially cost US airlines $3.1 billion by the year 2020. Some people have proposed that biofuels would be a viable alternative to fossil fuels because they burn cleaner and then could be used as jet fuel. However, one of the biggest problems of biofuels today is that they require large amounts of arable land and fresh water, resources which are dwindling rapidly. Total agriculture currently already consumes around 70% of the world's fresh water, and biofuel production alone is slated to consume around 8% of available freshwater in the United States by 2030. This isn't a sustainable situation because 2.4 billion people on the earth already live in areas where they don't have access to fresh drinking water, and the number of people in that situation is only slated to increase. Scientists in Abu Dhabi at the Sustainable Bioenergy Research Consortium, in partnership with Boeing, Etihad Airways, and Honeywell, are trying to find ways to make biofuel without using lots of fresh water or lots of land. They're using a plant called saliconia, which can actually grow in seawater, but produces oil-rich seeds that can be converted into biofuel. In this way, they can make biofuels at per acre yield similar to soybeans without consuming large amounts of fresh water or land. And these biofuels still emit 50 to 80% less carbon than conventional fossil fuels. Biotechnology is also being used to feed the world. Genetically modified organisms have increased agricultural income by a whopping $43 billion since their introduction in 1996. And by 2012, biotech crops were valued at around $115 billion, demonstrating the enormous positive impact that biotechnology has had on agriculture. Despite these effects, there still is a public fear of biotechnology in agriculture, particularly pertaining to the transgene transfer from biotech crops to natural crops. Scientists are working to prevent this transgene escape by implementing the genes not into the plant genome itself, but into the genome of chloroplasts or plastids, which are organelles within the plant cell. In this way, they can mitigate transgene transfer because plastids are only passed on through the female plant. But they can also express the plant protein, or the transgene protein, at very high rates, around 10,000 copies per plant cell, and are able to comprise around 46% of the plant protein. Biotechnology is also being used to heal the world. Malaria is a disease that affects around 200 million people, killing over 500,000 people per year. The really unfortunate thing about this statistic is that malaria is a highly treatable disease, and the drug used to treat it is very effective. However, the production of this drug requires a natural precursor called wormwood, the supply of which is highly volatile. Scientists at Amyris and Sanofi, supported by funds from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, are working to change this. They found a way to use fast-growing bread yeast to produce this precursor without the need for the wormwood plant at all. In this way, in the lab, they produced around 50 to 60 tons of this drug precursor and are slated to supply nearly half of the global demand for malaria drugs by the end of this year. By relying on the power of nature, biotechnology will allow us to feed and heal the Earth's growing population, feats that have previously often seemed unattainable.
So what you've seen here are 9 disruptive technologies that we have identified as having real commercial potential. These are not pipe dreams. There are real startups and inventors working on ideas as disruptive as the internet has been in decades past. If any of these technologies have been of particular interest, we'd be happy to chat with you about how we might be able to work to explore some of these technologies. In fact, what you've seen here is a sample of PreScouter's service. Typically, clients provide us with a statement of work. In this particular case, we have broadly looked at 9 disruptive technologies. In the second step, our team has a teleconference similar to this webinar, but where we would have interactive discussions with you and your teammates on the findings. And then, in the last step, we compile our findings into a report for you and your teammates to disseminate internally. With that, we will go into a couple of your questions from the chat room.
And the question for a key here is, of the 3 topics you've researched, which technology has the greatest disruptive potential, and why do you think so? Aki?
Thanks, Ashish. I do think that the question is kind of difficult to answer just because there's so many disruptive potentials for the technologies that were covered today. But I would have to say that out of all of them, I would pick terahertz wave technology just because the research that's going into terahertz wave technology right now is just growing so rapidly right now. And it's growing so rapidly in the way that it's opening up doors for technologies that were never before possible. And I think people are going to start seeing technologies that are enabled by terahertz waves that they've never seen before. And in this way, I think it's going to completely disrupt sensor technology, as well as like biomedical analysis, as well as chemical analysis. And in these ways, we're going to see capabilities that we have previously never really been able to apply to the applications that we need them to be applied to. So in that way, I think terahertz wave technology will be the most disruptive technology that out of the ones that I've presented today. Thanks, Ashish.
Thank you, Aki. That's a great explanation. Charlie, the question is, what is the largest obstacle we need to overcome for an Internet of Things to become a widely adopted technology?
Sure. So some of the general issues in the implementation of the Internet of Things would include standardizing protocols for devices to interact with each other, as well as coming up with policies to adequately address security and consumer privacy issues. But I would really consider the biggest obstacle in the adoption of the Internet of Things to be how do we create a smooth intersection between the old and new economies, basically the current providers of physical versus virtual services and products, to actually create the value for both sectors that will drive continued growth of the Internet of Things.
Great, thank you, Charlie. I guess we could also make that argument for advanced energy technologies as well. We need to have a good balance between old technologies and new technologies to integrate them in a seamless fashion. Okay, let's move on. Yeah, let's move on to one for Patricia. And the question here is, how long until 3D printing is widely adopted by industry? Patricia, do you have any thoughts on that?
Hi, Ashish. Well, I mean, as was shown in the presentation today, 3D printing is already being adopted in applications where it's high value, low volume manufacturing, and places where weight is a major issue. So aerospace and spacecraft have been early adopters. Increasingly, I think we will see it in more mass production applications, Google being a leader in that area with their initiative for customized modular phones.
Okay, great. Well, thank you very much. We did have some other questions, but in the sake of time as well as kind of everyone's schedules, I think what we'll do is we'll wrap up the call for today. But as mentioned, we apologize for any audio issues that you may have experienced. We'll look into that for our next webinar series, maybe moving to a different provider. In the interim, if you would like a copy of the free report, please do just email us at webinar@prescouter.com, and we will send you a full report. I think it's about 100 odd pages. It does include contact information on any of the technologies that we've spoken to today, and as well as other case studies as the presenters had spoken through. We also will investigate the option for getting this video posted somewhere publicly so that you can watch it in a more kind of time-lapsed fashion, so you can kind of go through the material at your own pace. With that, I would just like to thank everyone for joining the call today, and if you have any questions or any comments, any feedback that you'd like to provide us, we'd be very appreciative of that, so you can email us at webinar@prescouter.com, and we do look forward to speaking to all of you in the near future for our next webinar series. Thank you very much, and have a great day.